Hello and welcome to Stuff We've Seen. This is your humble narrator, James Kent. And with me, remote from his dungeon in Queens, it's Bill from Queens. Bill, say hello to the people.
Good morning, Jimmy. Great to see you. Hello, people.
Yes, it's great to see you, Billy. I know Billy is, this is sort of a rare treat. He keeps himself very mysterious, even more mysterious than Teal. And now I have two mysterious guys 2 weeks in a row captured on video for the world to see.
It all speaks to your power of personality. What can I tell you?
And persuasion.
If ever you wanted to start a cult, I'm sure, you'd do pretty well.
I just basically said, I will reveal all the secrets, Bill, if you don't come on the show.
That's right. And so here you are. You're two of the two people, the start of your Dreamlanders. There you go.
Yes. Yes. It's funny when you say that, Dreamlanders, and we're going to talk about John Waters' movies, I think, in the second half of the program. He had his cronies, the Dreamlanders, he called them, and his production company, Dreamland. When we were all hanging out back in the days of NYU, we kind of created this little group of stock actors and people that were in our stuff, and we called it Teal's Cavalcade of Stars, I think it was.
Yes. There was John Garofalo,
Johnny G. Yep.
Yeah.
Somewhere in Las Vegas, Nevada, we think.
Really, and
that's the last we heard.
And Viva, I forget who was.
Christina Kuda.
Yeah,
I think she's. We think we tracked her down in the Midwest somewhere, and there may have been a few police reports. We don't know.
Right. But I just remember that
she was in there.
I just remember doing some of the films and stuff, hanging out. It was very interesting. There was one film in particular I remember that we worked on, and it was all the way in downtown Manhattan on the weekend. And it was back because I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and incredible to change over 30 years, because the financial district in downtown around Tribeca about 30 years ago on a weekend, it would be like a ghost town, and you could shoot.
It's true. We were down there. There was no one there.
Yeah, and you could shoot in the middle of the day, just pretty much like out in the street, walking around, and you wouldn't see a person. There'd be tumbleweeds like blowing through the place. And now when you go down, now it's really packed, jam. It's like a city within a city. Yeah.
Bridge and tunnel people moved further down.
That's right.
They migrated further down.
That's right. Right.
Do they still call them the bridge and tunnel people?
Karen Silas from What Happened Was. There you go. She moved down there.
That's right. There's probably not a place in Manhattan anymore where you could live cheaply anymore.
They're apparently, again, it's a very relative term, cheap, for living in Manhattan. And, it's very funny that one of the places that became a big hipster neighborhood and a lot of people moved to was Washington Heights.
Wait a minute. Are we tying things together? I can't believe it. What a coincidence, because there's a musical that came out called In the Heights. And I think it was about Washington Heights, though if you think about the controversy that's sprung up, people don't seem to think that it represents Washington Heights. That seems to be the dust up, I think. Yeah,
I don't know a lot about the dust up. I've just kind of,
you don't follow the social media
headlines. I know, I don't. And my wife used to work a little bit in Washington Heights. I actually used to have to go up there for work a lot. I know the area fairly well. I've spent. It's the kind of place, Jimmy. That I know that you like kind of good food, and it's a place where you can get some really kind of great. Different kind of ethnic cuisines, like
a diverse mix
really,
of
really
food
great
possibilities.
Yes,
you have
absolutely.
Wendy's and McDonald's with some Taco Bell and all the chains.
That's
we're talking about real places.
When I used to have to go up there for work, there was a coffee place that I used to go to, like a corner, sort of not too unlike the in the film. where that you would get your coffee and it would be a cafe con leche, and there was this giant cauldron of just steamed milk that they would just put a ladle in and like throw it into your coffee, and they would have in the window these hot ham and cheese pastries that just were like, you'd walk by and you were like, you had to go in and get them. And
you did.
So, and I did, both coming and going, usually. I mean, it was really, really, it is an incredibly
Bill Muir, the
diverse
heavy
neighborhood.
years.
Right. Well, fortunately, I maintained an active lifestyle. So, walking to the subway. But the subway stations up there, actually, they use them in Joker as well.
Right.
They're like some of the long tunnel scenes. But I love, it's a beautiful neighborhood. And so we're talking about In the Heights. I really enjoyed the movie because I did because it's a celebration of New York at a time where I feel a lot of people professionally, politically are taking shots at New York. I can't tell you the number of people I've met over the past couple of months who seem to have come to the impression that New York City is on fire all the time, that, it's been taken over by, kind of anarchist terrorists. And
what reports are you listening to? I don't hear this stuff.
I'm talking about these people I meet, and they're like, whoa, it doesn't seem like there's too much crime on your block. They're expecting, you're going to step out and, you get all these people who come in from out of town and they're acting like they're Snake Plissken, like running around, in New York City.
Looking for Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to walk to the end of the block and they're going to be like, can you dig it?
Didn't you used to have it where like you used to leave your car doors unlocked just because you knew people were going to break into it to look for stuff, so you just left it unlocked so that they wouldn't damage the car? True or not true?
Oh, true. 100% true. 100% true. I had like kind of a permanent cut in the sealant by the mirror where people just would cut in, and drop in a coat hanger, and it just was not even worth it to lock it because it was just so easy for somebody. And I'm like, hey man, you want like old Dunkin' Donut bags? Have at it,
I remember that I drove cross country when I moved back east from California, and I did stop in and stayed like a night with you. And I was in Queens with my car, all my belongings. And I brought some of the valuable stuff as I could up in your apartment, but there was a whole trunk just filled with all my stuff. And it wasn't anything like super valuable or anything, but I just remember going, well, is it gonna survive or not? No one touched the car.
Yeah, well, because most 9 times out of 10, it didn't happen. But it was a different.
Yeah, right. I got the 9 times, and then it would miss.
Yeah, 9 times. But like I said, there are people who I've recently, people who are from out of town and have come in, and I've met at social occasions, and like I said, they're expecting that they're going to have to fight their way to Coney Island. And
now we got a Warriors reference in there. Yeah, I had a time, it was when I first moved to New York, it was like beginning of the second semester, right before the second semester started. I got in early, and I had this girlfriend, and she just got back into town, and she comes over to my apartment, because back then, you couldn't just really like always call and stuff, because people didn't have cell phones or anything, so you just sometimes would just show up somewhere, and shows up and happens here, and she's like, oh, we should go out to dinner. So we go out to dinner close to her house, and dinner time was an Uno's Pizza. It wasn't the mega chain.
On 6th Avenue.
Yeah. Well, no, it was this was one near 3rd Avenue. 3rd Avenue, 12th Street-ish, that whole area. Anyways, I'm just telling you the story. Billy, I'm telling you the story. I know you get your facts mixed up all the time. I don't know the exact location, but I know it was near where her apartment was. And anyways, so we go there, and we just order the food, right? And we're waiting for the food to come. And that's when she breaks up with me, right? She just got back into town, right? I'm thinking to myself, couldn't you have done that before I ordered like a meal? I mean, I was not going to be eating any food at that point, right? So Well, I'm just telling you the story. So we
Take the garlic knots home.
The garlic knots. Yeah, there was no garlic knots there at the time. I don't remember what we ordered, but I guarantee you there was not a lot of food eaten because I was sick to my stomach. So now the time, right, where I should have just walked away, just gone the other direction and said goodbye. But it was like, I'm going to walk her back to the apartment, right? We're still talking. And I'm kind of like, whoa, what's going on? She had just got back into town. I don't know what she was going to do with her car, but I don't know what the deal was there because how's she going to get back to wherever she was from? She had left her leather jacket in the car. Right. And she's just like that here. Remember like the 3rd Avenue, 12th Street, that you'd have like that parade of night walkers walking around the block and stuff.
Yes.
Well, of course we get to,
I mean, I got to tell you, it was, I'll never forget. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to,
you ruined the show. You ruined the story.
Yeah, I know. But but I'll never forget. I was on 3rd Avenue and 12th Street, and I was back in the days where you actually had, public payphones. Yeah. I was making a call to somebody around there, and I look over in the next payphone. There's a guy lighting up a crack vial, like right there, right. But yeah, so go ahead, continue.
Oh, so we get there, and of course, all I was supposed to do was just walk her home and then leave. There's a huge, big hole in the back of her car window, and somebody had busted that window and taken that leather jacket. And of course, then she was upset, so I had to go in. So that was like even more torturous. And all I could think of was, if for some reason I had decided to just go the other way and not come in, would she somehow think that I ran around and got mad and smashed her window in her car? And so I'm kind of glad that I was with her, so she knew that it wasn't me who broke into her car to steal her leather jacket. So anyway, that was just like a little crime story, 1990. But anyways, In the Heights. Okay, so I'm gonna give you what the controversy is the best as I can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you want to talk about the movie first, though, itself, or like what's your view of the film?
Well, I want to talk about the movie in a second, and then I want to talk about the controversy first, right? Because it ties in with. Look, I'm a white guy. All right. I'm certainly not representational of Washington Heights.
Jimmy, me too. And, as Robert De Niro kind of paraphrased him in Casino, I'm just another dumb fucking white man, so go ahead.
There you go. And you are. Just kidding. So, whatever this, I don't have a dog in this fight other than, and I'll be honest, what I've heard is the after effect controversy and people having to apologize and whatever for not representing enough. And I've heard about what the controversy is. I don't follow anybody that was very upset over this. And this is my issue again with Twitter is I think there are a lot of people that get very excited and get a little bit of a high that they can post something. Maybe they do it on purpose to be controversial, or they pick something that they think will trend and they go and post it, and then they watch the reaction and they get probably momentarily feeling really good of look what I was able to do. More so than were they really upset? Did they go through IMDb and look at the cast and then look up every ethnicity to see, haha, I was right. I don't know whether or not they did a good or bad thing. I mean, when you're casting a movie, casting directors, I mean, I don't think that they're really thinking, let's go down, spend some time in Washington Heights and see if we can pluck the right mix of people that really represent the neighborhood. I was just thinking this is was supposed to be a nice musical film to maybe lift me out of the doldrums of the pandemic. I guess the subject matter of the fact that it was Washington Heights and what I was going to get, am I going to get an authentic neighborhood? I mean, it's a musical. So, I mean, I think authenticity goes out the window a little bit.
Yes.
So I guess, I saw it before I saw it the opening weekend. And then the controversy sort of leaked out, I guess, by the end of the weekend and into last week. I really wasn't focused on that. I was just focused on, does this movie give me anything? So I just, again, people, when you want to critique a movie, there's probably a lot of other things that you could focus on and critique this film. And I just wondered, were you sitting down to watch In the Heights so you could, again, pinpoint whether or not this film was going to be completely 100% representational of what you feel was there, or haha, this is missing from the movie and the casting. I don't know. I feel like this is a slippery slope of like, is there any movie ever going to be satisfied for audiences today? And why this movie? Like, why is there's so many other movies that you could say, well, this doesn't you know what I mean? Like, it's just a weird thing that for some reason this has to be the standard bearer for the Latinx community.
Okay, and
I've given you some stuff.
Yeah, you have, and I
talk to me.
Understand. I don't know anything about the motivations of people since I really didn't read the critiques. The only thing I know is what they're talking about is that they felt that a lot of the performers were lighter-skinned Latinx actors, and Lin-Manuel Miranda, my understanding, is issued a statement apologizing. That's the controversy as I understand it, correct?
Well, there was the controversy, and then he's had to respond.
And then
we could have done better or whatever. I've never been to Washington Heights, as most people, and maybe is that what people worried? Like, they're going to think that this is what Washington Heights is like, that people jump out and on the street and dance and perform musical numbers at the swimming pool.
There is that swimming pool up there.
Exactly.
And you're absolutely right. One of representation. And it really is, the problem is, how do you portray any community, any neighborhood in its incredible, and there's the song, what is it? Carnaval de Barrio towards the end, which I think really kind of gets at it, is the idea how, we talk about Latinx as though, and when I was growing up, the identity of being Spanish as a kind of, monolithic entity is often what it was, I thought, in this country, what it meant to kind of all fall under the umbrella of Hispanic, right? So when I was growing up, in New York, everyone is sort of defined by their identity, their ethnic identity. Over here near where I live, not too far, where I actually used to work a long time ago, is this place where you have this incredible mixture of, 200 nationalities, 60 countries, 60 languages. And, I got to meet people who were Korean from Argentina, and all these just sort of insanely diverse kind of ethnic identities. And so it just made me kind of aware that it's very hard to reduce to kind of one size fits all, which, let's be honest, Hollywood tends to do. And Washington Heights is largely a Dominican community, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is Puerto Rican, of Puerto Rican descent, and he grew up in Inwood, kind of right adjacent to Washington Heights. And I think the issue here is, and if you're going to talk about generalities, people tend to make a distinction. Again, it's the whole idea of Afro-Latino identity, and that people who are Dominican, and I've met Dominicans with blue eyes and very, very fair skin, but when people tend to generalize about Dominicans, it's that they are often seen as being of darker skin color, and I think that's the source of the problem.
I guess there's so many stories going on in this movie, but the lead guy, Anthony Ramos, he was in Hamilton. He played 2 roles, but he played Hamilton's son. This is on the original Broadway production.
Right.
So he's a friend of Lin-Manuel Miranda's. And obviously, another thing, you want to cast somebody that can sing, right? So,
right.
Like it can sing. He is Puerto Rican. So he is not from the Dominican Republic. And that is probably where the issue goes, is that his character is supposed to be from the Dominican Republic. Because remember, his whole character wants to go back. So I think that's when, that there's where he gets into trouble. And I say he is like the filmmakers, because they cast a Puerto Rican for a Dominican Republic role. Now, his love interest in the movie, Vanessa, Melissa Barrera, I knew her from a show that was on Showtime called Vida. And I think she's a great actress. She's from Mexico, so no Dominican Republic actors there. Nina, another lead, Leslie Grace, she is from the Dominican Republic. So there's a character. Corey Hawkins, not from the Dominican Republic. He's from Washington, D.C. He's African-American. Abuela, she's from Cuba. And Jimmy Smits, he's Puerto Rican. Daphne Rubin Vega, she's Panama. Stephanie Beatriz, who was on Brooklyn 911, she's Colombian and Bolivian. And Dasha Polanco from Orange is the New Black, she's from the Dominican Republic. And of course, those are kind of the big leads. So I'm guessing that some of the fury, if you're going to have a lead character who's from the Dominican Republic, what they're saying is that Hollywood just thinks, oh, any Latin actor does. And I think the old Hollywood thinks about who's the best actor that we know, for singer that we want for this role, which was Lin-Manuel Miranda's role on Broadway. And of course, he is also not Dominican. So that, I guess, is the issue. The question would be, if they had changed it to his character wanting to go back to Puerto Rico, I wonder, would there be as much of a controversy?
I would say perhaps not, for a couple of reasons. I mean, the thing is, that neighborhood, as I said, does have more of a Dominican character. And also the time period where he's representing, it's really kind of comes out of the early 2000s. I just want to say, when there were these rolling blackouts.
So that's the problem. I think there's another issue when I get into the specifics of the problems of the movie, and this is where I had a problem. The blackouts, if you know the history, it was around 2003, 2004 is when those blackouts happened.
Yeah.
They never specifically...
our neighborhood got shut down too.
Yeah. It's okay, Bill. You're represented in my book. Okay? You're like, hey, man, over in Queens, we had some issues with that too, and we had some musical numbers. Okay? It was the Irish section, right? We had some Lord Flatleaf things going on. Okay? You don't hear me complaining that they didn't make a movie about me. Okay? Queens, over here, 2003, man. Represent. It's all right, Billy. We understand.
Okay,
we understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You've been represented enough. There was a whole movie a couple of years ago called The Irishman. Okay? You even got yourself in the title. Think De Niro. Well, Robert De Niro. Was he Irish? Was he Irish? I don't know. I don't think so. But he played Jimmy the Gent in Goodfellas. That was also Irish.
That's right. He was.
See? Yes. Interesting. And you may have opened up a can of worms. No, but the problem is the movie kind of sets itself. It doesn't really say what period, but with it basically, it's kind of like wants to have it 2 days. It's kind of like saying, well, it's today. We don't want to go into like, what does it look like in 2003? So they kind of make it like it's fairly now. And you're just supposed to go, well, there could have been some blackouts. But I think that they might have been better if they had actually said it in like 2003 and made that specific, and then also, done some tailoring so that we felt like it was then. I don't know what the mix of the neighborhood was back in then. Was there, was it?
It was. I mean, it's become more gentrified, as we were talking about before, with a lot of Manhattan, but still maintains a very, very strong, as I would say, mostly Dominican character.
Well, like I said, the lead guy is obviously supposed to be from the Dominican Republic. He keeps wanting to go back there, and you're supposed to think that he's back there, like narrating the story, and he's not. And so I guess,
right.
I don't know if I have necessarily a problem with it, but I'm also not Dominican. And I probably never even knew. I don't, like I said, I didn't go back to look and see, was he Dominican or not? And so,
right.
With this conversation, see, it's just sometimes I'm like willing to change. I'm not like going to start tweeting about it, but I can see where that's a problem because of the lead actor not representing, and that one casting change might have dissolved some of that controversy.
And I think, again, it's the issue is it's sort of similar. I mean, it's somewhat different in the sense that all of these societies are post-colonial societies, right? In terms of all of the Americas. And there's a color line there's often a kind of racial hierarchy that in the same way that exists in the United States. And I think it's kind of somewhat adjacent to a conversation. I know you and Teal have been, I think, very clear and very strong about the benefits of kind of having greater representation of people in color in film. I mean, that's been a big point of discussion for you two. Yes.
Well, let's put it this way. What I do see is when I go back and watch, and I do go back and watch a lot of movies from, other periods other than now, and it is surprising. It's not surprising, but like it's so glaring just how white those movies were.
Right.
And so, I mean, there's been some changes. I always feel bad when a film, here it is, in Lin-Manuel, I guess his defense, I mean, this is a guy who gets to put on Broadway a musical that isn't about white people at all. Right.
Right.
But then he gets more critiqued, than when you throw in your token character here and there, that seems to get a pass. Right. So he's trying, it's like I can't win.
And Jimmy, exactly. And there are a lot of people. I mean, let's talk about the issue of casting in Hamilton and race. And I have met people who find, I have come across people who find the whole idea of the interracial casting in Hamilton offensive.
Why?
It offends.
I'm just curious as to what is their rationale for why they find that offensive.
Why? Because they feel like it's ahistorical. They feel like, and there are people actually on the left who make critiques of it as well. They feel that it kind of, there are people who feel that it puts a multicultural kind of patina of acceptance on the founders. So there are people on the left who criticized it,
well, it's no 1776, the musical where everything was happy-go-lucky about our clear march for independence and freedom.
Exactly. With,
but I mean, that's why I think people, and rather than look at like the conversations that things like Hamilton that do open, and allow that. And I mean, even I guess with people critique, here's a piece of work, or I guess art, that actually starts engaging a dialogue beyond, hey man, kiss me, Kate. Did you catch that? There's not, there's so much stuff where you can't even go. And I would argue that like this in the Heights, if anything, it is pretty fluff. There's really nothing other than what they've created with the controversy. The material itself, it's like a standard story trying to get to one thing to another.
Yeah, it's classic Broadway, classic Hollywood. You might even say, cliched.
You might.
But I actually really. Yeah. Okay.
So you enjoyed.
But that would be to knock it.
You enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. My wife did not. She compared the opening to, there's a kids musical that we've seen maybe more times because of all my children, like ever. Elmo, Elmo and Grouchland. That's a musical, and she compared the opening to Elmo and Grouchland, where like everyone started
in the Heights is like Sesame Street.
Yeah. That's basically.
Here's my sure. I had a good time. I've already kind of forgotten about the movie 1 week later. That's a problem.
Right.
The story didn't really engage me. I found it kind of slow. And, I love multiple stories, right? But at the same time, this movie didn't have a strong focus. I really didn't know.
Right.
And the convention about the guy, the non-Dominican, talking to the kids, keep coming back, telling this story. To me, it was so obvious.
It was Navi. The character was Navi.
Us Navi, which was U.S. Navy.
Yes.
His dad named him there. So funny. But it was so obvious to me that this guy, we were going to have some kind of reveal where he did not go to the Dominican Republic, because it made no sense. It would make no sense for the rest of the movie that it's so great and fun there that you would leave. And so when you don't buy into that, that's a problem. Another thing, it's funny, for all the great songs in Hamilton and what it hit, this feels like he was working his way to Hamilton, because I don't feel like the songs are very strong. They're not very memorable. I can't remember anything in that movie or musical. I enjoyed myself as I was watching it, but it's not as strong a work as Hamilton at all.
100%. I absolutely, but there are moments that I thought were, had a kind of beautiful lyricism. The moment, the scene where they're dancing on the side of the building, I thought was really well done.
Well, I don't usually like magic realism, but if you're going to buy into musicals, well, magic realism comes into play. This is what I would say.
Absolutely.
So John M. Chu, the guy who directed the movie, he also directed Crazy Rich Asians, which I hated. I thought it was terrible.
Okay.
I hated that movie.
Right.
Here's what
I didn't see it.
Here's what I liked about this film. Well, I thought that the musical numbers were really well directed and choreographed.
Yes.
Including things like that. I felt that why the magic realism worked in the movie for me is he did something that you don't see in a lot of other musicals. For this fantasy, it felt like it was in a real place. Like it's shot on real streets. It's not that typical, like, oh, we're doing a musical. We're going to throw lots of lighting and it doesn't matter because it's a musical. And so there's a big, like, flashing key light on my face that could only come from a studio light, and that the interiors are so obviously sets, and yet it's widescreen and it looks like it's on a soundstage and there's no apartment that could look that big. Not in this movie. I think that the cinematography...
The apartment felt very real, I'm just going to say.
The cinematography is by Alice Brooks. This seems to be her first big feature, though she's done a lot of other things. I think that the cinematography in this movie is incredible. And the reason why I say that is because it, to me, doesn't feel like especially where I don't know whether it was shot on film or digital, but it looks very naturalistic. And for a musical, that's surprising. You have like that, the pool scene. But usually those scenes in musicals today, they'd be so filled with extra light and almost a high gloss. So it's like, hey, this is a fantasy. But instead, they keep the musical number in reality, but they do those like little CGI elements that come throwing in that are kind of like surprise little fun. And like I said, when they're out on the little banister, and next thing you know, they're going on the side of the wall and they're walking. It's kind of magical.
That's what I like. And that's what musicals should be at their best. And I think, as you said, I don't know of how much consequence the story really is in terms of its kind of, its deeper social statement. But I do think it's kind of a piece, I think, with Hamilton, in terms of, as you said, talking about the immigrant experience. And I think it ultimately at the end, there's often, this desire to return. Think about movies like The Quiet Man, even the movie that kind of came out around the same time, Belly, the Hype Williams movie with Nas and DMX, who just passed, the idea of going back and kind of leaving America. And here in the end, he affirms, he decides to stay. And so I think in that way, it's kind of a piece of Hamilton, in the sense that it's kind of affirming American identity. And so that, is what I'd say about it. I also just wanted to say almost kind of, so I liked it. I really, and I liked it. Part of the reason I liked it was, again, I like to see, I'm right now, just the idea of seeing a story set in New York that has a very kind of positive view of New York, I think is great and much needed.
Well, there you go. And I didn't really like it as much as you did. I had a good time though, but I don't know if I'm going to watch it again, but again, I feel that we don't have a lot of movies. And another, a blow to me in my town, I've kind of complained about it on the show many times, this, crappy multiplex that we have. And we're lucky because where I live, it's pretty remote, but it's one of the city areas. And if it wasn't for this theater, the next theater, which isn't an 8-person theater, an 8-screen theater, is about 45 minutes away. Well, it's been closed since the pandemic. It's now permanently closed. It's not going to open.
Oh, wait. Yeah. So it never. So I thought that you had gone to see it when you saw Tenet, but you went somewhere.
Oh, I had to go an hour and 40 minutes away to see that.
To see Tenet.
Yeah. So,
by the way, can I tell you something? That's insane to me, because I have now sat through Tenet twice. I've put it on the TV while I was doing some work or something. And and I couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it when it was in my living room. So the idea of driving an hour and 40 minutes.
It's a big screen experience. And, then it seemed like, okay, movies are going to open up. It'll be a little different. And then, of course, movies didn't. And we're still waiting for
You were there to support it?
Yeah. Right. But, now Well, I don't like the HBO Max, like put it on instead, because the natural inclination is if I own HBO, well, why do I want to go to a theater to see what I can see in my living room? It's just, that's a hard thing for me to go. So, I think I would have enjoyed In the Heights a little bit differently if I could have seen it in the theater.
If you'd seen it, absolutely.
But I can't see it in the theater even if I wanted to. I'd have to go pretty far away. It was playing, like I could go over the border to New York. I could go like an hour and a half to Saratoga Springs. And there's a theater there. But that's, an hour and a half. Now, what I'm going to probably have to do in the future, and there's some talk, they're hoping that maybe another company can come in and, the theater's got all the projections and stuff there. So maybe someplace will buy it, but that's going to take time. So, if there's once movies come out that I really want to see, I'll have to do like double features. I'll have to like go down there, for like a day.
Spend the day with the kids.
Yeah. So it's just, there's a lot of things unfortunate. So we've talked about In the Heights. I really do appreciate talking through this controversy because I really wasn't understanding it. And now I understand it a little bit better.
Jimmy, I'm not even sure if I understand it, but I think again, it's this problem of representation, and, I guess, again, this sort of color line that, can I just mention one thing that's sort of, again, I know you probably want to move on to another topic.
I probably do.
But,
because we got a lot to cover here, man.
I just want to say in terms of, very interesting in terms of interracial casting was, David Copperfield and kind of non-traditional.
I haven't seen that.
Casting along race. It's on, I think it's on HBO Max or it's on Amazon. It's the Armando Iannucci one.
No, I got to check that out.
It's incredible.
Oh.
I really enjoyed it and I really liked it quite a bit. And it is not an all white BBC production kind of traditionally done. And I think it's kind of incredible and it opens up kind of in the same way for Shakespeare, the idea that Dickens, imagine you're some, kid in an English school who is not of European background and you're reading Charles Dickens, and I think, it's the idea that, well, this has no meaning to you. It's sort of outside of your purview. And so I just think it's very well done. Again, this idea, I think it just sort of opens it up a bit more. And it's a really good film. I think it's quite good.
I think that there are certain films, stories, and if they're told that you might want to see completely historically accurate. Like I think it could also be bad to go the other way. Like all films and all stories, I completely agree. So there's a time for, but then there's other times where you make a decision to mix up the casting, and it becomes an artistic choice. But then it also, like you said, it opens it up in that when someone watches a story, not that they wouldn't enjoy it if it was like all correct race casting, but they can look at that and say, it is possible. Like if I want to be an actor, I could actually play these roles because there was a long history in film where you'd watch these films and be like, I guess I'll never get a chance to play A, B, or C.
Right. And Jimmy, I mentioned this, and the reason I keep harping on about it was that I know, look, because I keep running into people, as I said, you would think that I live in like Wokistan or something, but I keep, having these barroom conversations with like people who are still upset.
Is that AOC taking over the town or what? That AOC. I even have
that. I keep sitting next to these people.
That AOC, she's a radical left.
Kids baseball games, and bars who are still upset that Samuel L. Jackson was cast as Nick Fury and they got rid of David Hasselhoff.
I'm hoping that is not a true.
Or Dune. What? They got rid of the Swedish guy, Max von Sydow. They made him black and a girl. What?
But see, we know what's so great about a thing like that. That person is simultaneously trying to show you A, how racist they are, but B, look at their film knowledge. See, it's like cousin.
They had to.
Christopher, he's like, hey, Marty, Kundun. I liked it. Yeah, that's the best part. Like The Sopranos, those guys would all like try to show, look at all the film knowledge we have. And almost every episode, they were like,
Up. I knew they were going to change some character. There you go. All right. Goodbye, Max von Sydow.
It's like in the Heights, when we make collections up there, that's not the way it looks. All right. They got to have authenticity. All right. When I go into those baristas and shake them down for money, they don't look like that guy. Yeah. See, we can bring it back to some humor. Okay. So, Disney Plus, right? Got to have that plus. Everybody's got a plus now, right? Just to let you know that the plus means money that you're going to have to spend on the service. And Disney's been rolling out these, I guess, second-tier Marvel. You have to have the Disney Plus so you can watch all of these like little TV shows so that you can get in with whatever movies that they're going to have coming down the pike. And they've had the WandaVision, which, kind of liked. Then they had
I liked it a lot.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I think I finished 2 episodes, and nobody in my family seems to like that.
It gets better once it becomes a little bit more coherent, okay. I would say. At the beginning, there's a lot of stuff they're trying to squeeze into the sausage at first. And yeah, so there's a lot that's going on that I don't find it as compelling. And I heard you and Teal speak on this, so I just would say it becomes more coherent as it moves on.
Now, we'll see. Eventually I'll get to it. But then they have this Loki. And I don't know why I was kind of interested in watching this Loki, but I know that you'd also been like, you gotta watch this Loki. So I watched this Loki. Watched both episodes that are available. So, you're the big Marvel guy, not me. So, Billy, what are your thoughts on this Loki?
I'm actually really quite enjoying it. I'm enjoying it because they seem to be taking sort of some of the incoherence of the timeline scenarios that gets introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the idea of how you're going to have, when you have these sort of breaks in the time and how you can have multiple people existing at multiple moments of time. And they basically take that incoherence, that kind of gob of shit, I guess, that kind of is a problem in the larger thing, and they turn it into a football and run with it. They're like, yeah, that's right.
Well, it also gives them a vehicle for bringing people back at any time. So should somebody's bank account get a little light and they decide they would like to come back, they can come back.
Yes. And so I got to say that takes balls to kind of double down on something like that, like, this kind of incoherence in.
But from what I hear, there's actually comics based on all this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are. Right. There, in both DC and in, they always kind of play around with this. But I actually, so far I enjoy it. What I always liked, and my kids always liked, Tom Hiddleston, the actor who plays Loki. And I think what they also address is how he goes from being an out and out villain in the earlier films to a much more sympathetic and engaging character, because he really is a villain of the old school, though? And that they're working on it, I think. And part of it is that
the redemption of Loki.
There is an arc. Right. I mean, there is an arc with this character. He really is a kind of great baddie in the sense that he gets all the best put down lines. He gets to be really snarky and obnoxious. And that's sort of what's a pleasure about the character and about Hiddleston's performance. And I think, the introduction of Owen Wilson is
Mobius?
Hilarious. Yeah. Mobius. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So, lame name perhaps, but,
still,
it's
from the comics. What are you going to do?
I know. But it's still, I enjoy it. So the things that I enjoy so far, Tom Hiddleston's performance, I think he and Owen Wilson have great energy together. And lastly, the thing that I think is really, I'm enjoying, the production design, the art direction, I think is really quite good. I was going to say, I like it a lot. I think it's very well done. I think this and WandaVision both have really nice design and are very clever. But the one thing though that is interesting and actually maybe is a little bit annoying is, have you noticed again this kind of trope where the forces of fate or the forces of the universe are represented as some like mid 20th century bureaucracy or kind of office. It's the same thing.
But yet you just said you like the production
with
design,
Beetlejuice,
but now you're complaining about that.
Well, I mean, but it's. I think it fits this.
It's a TV
this
show.
Trope. I actually think. Yeah, but I think it does it better than like I think the production design is better than say John Wick or something.
Well, I think Miss
but,
Minutes.
Like, go back to like say, right,
Miss
right,
Minutes,
right.
the little
and
cartoon
so I just
clock.
The little clock. Yeah. So anyway, that's my take on it. I really think it's worth watching, and at this point, it's now middle of the week. You know that's what we're going to be doing for the next couple of weeks. So your thoughts, sir?
Well, you just said something that was kind of interesting about this trope about the bureaucracy thing, and that is becoming a kind of a thing with like the John Wick movies, right? Where there's this whole like other world run by this bureaucracy, and I noticed that, and to some degree, that Nobody movie, which was also written by the John Wick guy, that has a feel to that. And now in July on Netflix, there's a movie coming out called Gunpowder Milkshake, and it's a female-centric version of that, where there's a society, and it seems to be like, hey, let's do John Wick, but with females. And it features Karen Gillan, who is... she's in Guardians of the Galaxy. She's the one that talks like that. You know, she's what's her face's sister in that.
Yeah.
So she plays the lead in Gunpowder Milkshake. So there definitely is a thing going on. But as far as Loki goes, there are a few special effects things that annoy me, especially when they go on to a new time. It feels very much like they're on a soundstage and they've put some digital backdrop in to look like that. That kind of annoys me. I think it's
you and Teal have gone. Yeah, you and Teal have highlighted that. I've become a little bit more aware of that because of your conversation.
Well, it looks very there in this. Also, I'm not as much of a fan of when it gets very Marvel story. Like I could care honestly. Like I'm watching it and I know I have to go through this stuff, and I could care less about like them going back in time and trying to catch this character who's under a robe and then it's going to get revealed. Like, I don't even really care about that stuff. To me, the reasons to watch this the series is all about, well, Tom Hiddleston. I mean, Loki was never one of my favorite characters. I'm just going to be honest. I mean, I'm a big fan of these things. But to me, the standout, like, it is such an amazing vehicle, written and acted by Owen Wilson. It could be the best thing he's ever done.
Yes.
He is so outstanding
by the way,
in this. I don't know how they write the character really so well, whether he's just able to adapt the material, because he does a certain thing well, and it's sort of like Vince Vaughn. You have to get the right Vince Vaughn vehicle where he can just go to town. I mean, yes. Owen Wilson has never been better.
I absolutely agree.
You like it so much you got a mustache to honor the Mobius character. You just needed to gray up that hair a little bit.
My Mobius stash. There you go. Yeah, he's really terrific. And do you know how he looks, who he reminds me of in a way? And he looks like Bill Murray in Rushmore.
A little bit, yeah. Well, I guess the Mobius character, I don't want to read the comics, but I've read about what's going on here, is the mustache is part of that character. And Owen Wilson wanted to do something different with his hair than his typical gruffy shag. So he said, can I maybe gray it up? And I love that look. He looks slick. He looks cool. But my favorite thing in the writing is that here's a character. He's so laid back and everything. He knows everything about Loki and all his tricks, and he calls him out on all this stuff. And he's like, you've literally stabbed people in the back. He's like,
people in the back 50 times.
Yeah, 50. It's like, it's hilarious how he comments on all the stuff that we've gone through in Marvel movies, in a sense. He's like a Greek chorus, a conscience, and yet he's got his own character. He's very an interesting character.
Yes, and that's I have to say, and I really do enjoy the scenes with the two of them together. I think they work very well.
You can't force a buddy move, thing to work. It has to work. And so again, they seem to work as a pair, but yet like they're not like friends or anything. Like maybe I don't know. There's just something again.
No, there's good badinage between the two.
But it has to be the best casting I've ever seen. I mean, the idea of like, we got to get Owen Wilson for this role, because he was just. It's like there's nobody else.
I wouldn't. And I wouldn't have expected it. I got to be honest. I was a little like, wow.
Yeah, well, I think that's what got me when I saw. I'm like, Owen Wilson's going to be in this. I had known, I didn't know anything about the. I was like, I got to check this out, and he is definitely for me. Some of the set design stuff, like you said, like that sort of retro futurist look.
I think that's like right up your alley.
No, I like that stuff. It's a little bit like Incredibles kind of stuff. And then also, again, the Owen Wilson. So I'm excited to watch it every week for another 4 episodes.
Wow. What? Wow, well, that's the most.
We would do that with WandaVision too, where with Captain America, we can't get through it, but like WandaVision every Friday.
But I thought it took you a little bit to kind of you were a little like hesitant about WandaVision, whereas here I think you're buying in a lot more sooner than you did before.
Well, it's just fun, though. I got to say that sometimes, like, I thought maybe this was going to be a little bit of a time crimes show where each week it'd be like Highway to Heaven. They go to a new town and they got to solve a mystery or something. Remember that? That was like the big trouble. It was like it was sort of like with Bill Bixby and the Hulk. Every week, he's just some weird guy in a town, and they're like, "Oh, let's fix you up with a job." And in Highway to Heaven, there's these 2 dudes wandering around. Oh, we can get you a job as janitors at the school where there's going to be a problem.
That's right.
That used to be a big thing. They don't do that anymore. But like, I sometimes miss the sort of capsule episode of a show
disjointed,
where like, hey, we gotta solve. Instead, it's like all focused on this bigger picture thing. And I think that, well, they're only doing 6 episodes and all trying to tie it into a movie. But it would have been nice to maybe have a show where Loki could actually help them out. I thought that we were going to get a few like, hey, I'm going to help you out with a few time crimes here. Gotta stop Jean-Claude Van Damme in 1 episode. Like, special guest star this week. Bert Convy. It's your time criminal. Yeah. Who's
Terry Bradshaw?
Yeah, who's right? Who's the right? So like this week, The Rock. Oh, but he's bad. They're going to turn into a sort of a Love Boaty type thing. But anyways, right. I don't really want to say anything more.
John Saxon,
I know he's gone. But he was on many fantasy islands, and I used to love that show because I thought it was a real place. I didn't understand that. I was like, but this is weird. Like, is there a place you go and you pay $50,000 and you get your fantasy done? Like, and what's the scoop?
Yeah, Vegas.
Yeah, I didn't understand how fantasy island. I thought the Love Boat was a real place too. I mean, I knew that they were actors, but I thought there was like a real thing called the Love Boat. And I thought they went on cruises and shot all the episodes. I didn't understand until now. I look and go, oh, I can see shadows on that backdrop of the sky. Yep. It's a gaffer walked by.
It's funny. Years later, I met a priest. who was a writer.
I know. You used to tell me the stories. Yeah, he was a writer.
Yeah. So
right. But does he let you take communion still, Joe Biden? Okay.
He would.
Speaking of priests and blasphemy, our next topic, which is like now we've talked for like, let me see, we've talked for almost an hour. We don't have much time left. This is Pride Month, all month. You can have Pride all month, and then you got to stop having some Pride. No, you can have Pride all year long, but in June, the focus is Pride Month, and the Criterion Collection, one of my favorites, they are doing a focus on queer cinema. They call it Queer-Sighted is one of their themes. They did it last year, doing it again, and one of the focuses is John Waters, 3 of his movies from his early years, and also some other films that were influential on John Waters happen to also be in the collection. So, you were gracious enough to come on the show months ago. We talked about Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is showing on Criterion with, cause it's also part of their collection. It's showing with all their bells and whistles. Right. So, there's like some extras, and there is.
Yeah. You watched it with the commentary
with Roger Ebert, who was the co-writer.
Right.
And it was fascinating to rewatch this movie and have him go through all this stuff and hear the history behind the making of it as far as a script. And that was really fascinating. And so I'm recommending for people who've maybe seen Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, if you want to get a little bit more of an in-depth look at it, you should watch it with the commentary. It's pretty cool. But it was a huge, huge influence on John Waters, who went to see the movie opening day. And as he would do, he would like search out stuff that was right in his wheelhouse. And so one of the things is that as I watched John Waters films over the years, I was probably introduced to him in my teens. And I think the first film I ever watched of John Waters, I knew about him before I saw any of his films, was probably Hairspray. That was my first actual taste.
Right.
And I loved Hairspray. So then the next film that I got to see was a double feature of Polyester and Pink Flamingos at the Somerville Theater.
Right.
Got the scratch and sniff card. And I feel that there are certain films, and maybe not for kids today, I don't know, but there were definitely in our age, there were certain films that were like, I feel like rite of passage movies that you'd have to see. Things like Eraserhead. If you're a film person, right? There's like certain, and they were.
For film guys.
You had to see Eraserhead. You had to see Pink Flamingos. I mean, you could see other John Waters movies, but that was the one you had to see. And
midnight movies.
Midnight movies, right? And I've been obsessed with midnight movies for years. And I even watched some specials about midnight movies in preparation for this maybe 5 minutes that we're going to get to talk about John Waters. But I had seen Female Trouble, which is one of the 3 movies that they're featuring on Criterion. They're also featuring Pink Flamingos, which was fascinating to me because that doesn't show up on services like ever. Like that just never shows up. So I was excited because I have not seen Pink Flamingos since that time in the theater when I was like 17 years old. So, I mean, it's been over 30 years since I saw Pink Flamingos. And there were certain things that always, like with a movie like Pink Flamingos, like every film, you kind of forget details, but you will never forget certain things out of that movie because they're so shocking.
No.
And we talked about it, on a couple of, like, whatever you were on in the fall, we talked about some of the scenes and your friends hanging out watching this and being shocked.
But yeah, so I watched it with the commentary on your advice, and I thought it was terrific to kind of see it again and to get his point of view.
Well, so I watched Pink Flamingos again, and then I was like, I can't resist. I need to see it with this commentary. And I think it sounds like John Waters, and this is 97. This is 25 years after the movie came out is when the commentary was. Right. And yet it's been almost another 25 years, which is crazy. Right. So now, he was 50 when he did the commentary and now he's in his 70s. He sounded a little embarrassed and he even kind of said so about some of the scenes. Like he's kind of like, I wouldn't do that now.
Well, okay. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I found, like, I first of all, just watching I only watched 2 of the films that they're offering. I watched Pink Flamingos and I watched Female Trouble. I didn't watch Multiple Maniacs. But I just have to say, he is kind of a genius.
Yes.
In terms of his radical queer critique of American culture it is hilarious. It is sharp. It is as biting a satire as you can have. I mean, it's outrageous. And the thing that was interesting to me is how shocking a lot of the Manson family stuff was and how he really means to shock.
When you see them all together, that's where I think when you watch, like when I was growing up, and if I made, like, you may not catch some of this stuff, and then you watch all 3 of these films together, and he was very obsessed with the whole Manson family thing. And you see just how obsessed he was through the plot lines, through the little Easter eggs that he has in there, and the fact that he really did go to the trial, which is pretty wild.
And started to visit them in prison.
So that's a little bit, that's pretty shocking. He was definitely a guy who was into his own sort of like radical politics.
And I think that's one of the great things about the commentary is how, quite frankly, revolutionary it sort of is, or at least in its intent. And so I just, my respect for him, I have to say, really it increased through watching with the commentary just because of how articulate, how intelligent he was, how, quite frankly, open he was about stuff that was kind of embarrassing, and stuff that would maybe be questionable, now. And, because I got to tell you, I was prepared to come on and be like, this Manson family stuff, I'm not really down with that and stuff. But I just think, and again, I think the way that he spoke about it was really very interesting, and he just provided a context to it that was gave it greater clarity.
Well, all right. So again, I think that it was funny. We began the discussion with In the Heights and how like today, like people jumping on social media, whether or not the controversy is valid, people love to create a controversy. And we think about, like, imagine if social media was back in the days when like a playing Flamingos would come out, right? But now, right. So these films were influential on, I guess, our generation of wanting to be filmmakers. We go to film school. And if you think about like late 80s, early 90s, when we were at NYU, that we see these student films, and not everybody. I mean, I couldn't get, I was very, I was like, I can't get an actor or actress to do A, B, or C. I may have had ideas of things I'd want, but I'm like, this is a student film. But we saw kids that really pushed the envelope in terms of content. And we saw a lot of sexual things in student movies with kids, like actors, like you couldn't believe that people would do this for a student film. And I think that was something where, there was a different mindset going on. And you take it back into the early 70s, this group of Baltimoreans who were wild, anti-establishment, they were counterculture, they were into a lot of drugs and stuff. And they didn't effing care. Like, I mean, you get an insane respect. The stuff when you watch Female Trouble and then you watch, you see also Multiple Maniacs, the Divine is the greatest. How Divine would do anything. When jumping up and down on the trampoline and stuff. Oh my God. Oh, I know. And what a trailblazer. But here's another thing about the genius, right? And it's maybe unintentional because he admits, you can hear him on the commentary, and I'm talking about John Waters. He didn't know a lot about filmmaking. He just knew he wanted to film these things, and he gets better. He learned a lot. I actually thought I think he had some natural talent, but you understand, like when you're watching all three of these films, one thing that becomes obviously clear, there are these painfully long scenes of dialogue and stuff. And he has a camera with a zoom lens, and he's zooming and he's trying to make cuts with zooms. He never cuts. And I think I always understood it as well. He didn't have the budget for film, so he had to shoot everything, couldn't do a lot of shots. However, he explains he was shooting with film that had a mag sound strip. And it was those color things that we got when we used to have Super 8, but he had 16 millimeter. Reversal. And they did it for news camera film back in the 70s. And so he couldn't cut because he also didn't know a lot about editing and didn't have the equipment. He had to cut it a certain way. So they would rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse all of these scenes. So as if they were just basically doing a play. If they screwed up, he had to reshoot it again.
It reminded me of shooting early video, the way that like people used to have like home movie cameras and do something. It's like, okay, start.
Yeah, we would do like stop. You had to figure out what your edits were going to be
together
because you didn't have anything to edit them. But here's what was so great when you watch these films. Again, some of them go long and it can make some parts a little slow, but what it achieves is a hypnotic effect where you want to look away when the scene gets a little bit too much, but you can't because he never cuts away to anything. You are forced to accept he's put everything here and you have to get it. And there is just the dialogue he writes. There is stuff that when you have female characters, right, say things that you would never hear in any movie. It's so great.
Mink Stoles, and coming out of Mink Stoles' mouth is the funniest.
Well, that's the
thing.
best part. Is so there's obviously he has some really bad actors, and he doesn't care, and some of them are terrible. But then you get occasionally a really good actor, and Mink Stole can actually act. Her character, Taffy Davenport, in
Taffy, what are you writing a book?
She comes out, she's like. It's so surreal and creepy, and the idea that she has this adult playing this little teenager so that they can have these sexual discussions and things, and that Divine also plays the Divine's rapist in the movie who becomes Taffy's dad, and then she goes to visit him, and he's like sticking out his his penis, and he's like, come here, Taffy. And it's so creepy, and there's a line to me out of all those John Waters movies I watch. It's the greatest line.
Okay, say it. I think it is. Go for it.
Don Davenport's boyfriend, he's sitting there, and Taffy first comes out, and he's looking at him. He's like, "Hey, Taffy, suck my cock," and she's like, "I wouldn't suck your cock if I was suffocating and your ball sack was filled with oxygen." I'm like, I can't believe that just came out of somebody's mouth. I howled with laughter, and
it's that should have been my high school yearbook.
That quote. And another character that I love in all of these three movies is David Lochary, and he's the one with that awesome mustache. Yeah. And usually the crazy,
yes, and the blue hair, right?
He's one of the marbles in Pink Flamingos, and he just cracks me up. He's so good. In Multiple Maniacs, he's pretty good too. And like they set up, they're like sort of like a freak show that people come, they set up a tent, and they do it just so that they can actually rob the people that go in. And he's the barker, and he's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, come on in. You'll see two queers kissing, two actual queers. That's right. You'll get up and close and see them. Come in, ladies and gentlemen. You won't believe what you're going to see. Such filth and depravity." He was so great. And again, it's sad is that with some of these Dreamlanders, they didn't last too long. And in the late 70s, David Lochary, it's very unclear exactly what happened, but he was like high on PCP, and I think he accidentally like cut himself and bled to death. He had gotten very heavily involved in drugs. And then another great act, she didn't really get any good starring roles in any of the movies, but she's a good side player, is Cookie Muller. And she's got these great, I mean, we talk about that show with Kate Winslet trying to do this Pennsylvania accent. The Baltimore accent is even more elongated, and John Waters thrives in having these actors really accentuate the Baltimore accent. It's so great. Like when David Lochary, he calls up on the phone to the police, I think in Pink Flamingos, and he says, "I just saw something." It's like, "Officer," it's like, "you've got to arrest this one. She's a whore." I love it. Like everything about these movies. I mean, Pink Flamingos is like pretty disjointed, and it's just the idea of this plot. And it's funny when John Waters talks about it, how radical it was in the early 70s, but not so anymore. The idea of being the filthiest person alive. I love that there's a competition going on between these two people to become the filthiest people alive.
But I got to say, there's a Warner Brother Looney Tune quality to the combat, but in this, and also with Ida in Female Trouble.
Well, that's another one. Is
like Divine throwing fish on
the Edith Massey, the egg lady. Which, by the way, that still to me is the most disturbing thing in Pink Flamingos, other than all the crazy sexual acts, is her sitting in that pen, the playpen. Is so creepy.
It's very funny. This guy who the first time I heard of Pink Flamingos was, I was roommates with a guy in a summer program when I was in high school who I later went to NYU. His name was Chum. And,
Chum.
He was obsessed. Yeah. And he was obsessed with Pink Flamingos. And he used to quote that, cotton. Yeah.
Are you the Eggman?
So that's what made me want to go see that movie straight, because he never stopped quoting it.
I mean, look, it's still, even to this day, I mean, talk about holding up for its shock value. There's stuff in this film that you aren't prepared for, because it's just not like when you think of like an X-rated movie. Okay, if you're going in for straight porno or something, you kind of know, I know what I'm getting into. This film, well, all three of these movies, by the way, are rated X, and there's
genuinely shocking.
I found the most shocking was in Multiple Maniacs, because I didn't really know much about it, so I had forgotten, and then I was reminded. There's a scene where a big person in a lobster costume breaks down the door in the end and rapes Divine, and that's pretty outrageous. But when she is reciting the Stations of the Cross, and it's intercut with her sitting in a church service, and then this woman, Mink Stole, comes up behind her, and then they start going at it, and then Mink Stole rapes her anally with a rosary. I mean, in a church.
Yeah, with a crucifix.
And so,
yes.
So basically they had to they said to the priest, oh, we want to film in here. And they kept him outside for as long as possible while they shot that scene. It's pretty outrageous. And the movie, that one probably is his weakest. Like, I think he had some ideas. He got it more formalized in Pink Flamingos. Then in Female Trouble, I think there's a little bit more of a cohesive plot, though I think it drags a little bit towards the end. But the first half of Female Trouble I really love, and when Taffy first comes on the scene, Mink Stole for me is the best part of that whole movie.
I really like Mink Stole also in later on Serial Mom. She's great.
Yeah, Serial Mom's good too. I haven't seen that in years, but I saw it in the theater when it came out.
Me too. Yeah. Me too. Serial Mom, I thought was great, and you think about how polished Hairspray seems at that point, like really how, it really, and for him, that's kind of playing it straight, but just an incredible film.
He grew up. Like, the best part about those early movies is it does show a lack of maturity. When you're immature, you like, how can I shock people? How can I be that outrageous? But
yes,
you lose that as you get older. And I think that's what the charm is when you see this film, is that, and again, I feel like it's still a rite of passage. I feel like
charm. I like how you're using the word charm. A film.
Have you seen Desperate Living? I've never seen Desperate Living. Have you seen that?
I've never seen Desperate Living. I've never seen Polyester.
Oh, Polyester is really good. And I saw most of those, not all of them, but most of them in the theater. I mean, I've already talked about Rocky Horror. That was a big thing for me. More so than like Pink Flamingos. I didn't see that at midnight. I saw it actually at like a Friday night. It was like a 10 o'clock show. And I was just so proud that I wasn't 18, but they let me in, because it was the Somerville. They let me in to see it. And I felt afterwards like I should receive a badge of honor. Well, I got the Polyester Odorama card. So I sort of, but like.
Yes, which, do you still have that?
No, I don't, because in the 90s,
oh, is that? I remember when you stayed with me in Queens, they broke into the car.
Yes, along with my wallet. But there was a guy, cop in the neighborhood. The guy, we went and thanked him. No, in the 90s, a guy who I knew who loved this kind of stuff. He heard that I had the scratch and sniff sticker thing, and he had rented Polyester, and he's like, "Can I borrow that scratch and sniff? Because I would like to." And I'm like, "Sure." He wouldn't. He never gave it back. And then he did one of these things. It was almost like out of a Larry David episode where he pretended like he never.
He did give it back.
Pretended like I never gave him the card, that he had the card and it wasn't, and it was weird. That wasn't what broke up our friendship. What? We kind of drifted apart. But I'm like, dude, what the hell? I know what I gave you. I'd like my card back, thank you. I won't mention the guy's name, but
is he still out there?
I don't think he probably listens to the show, but I know him. Oh, he's there. And I'm never going to get that card back. I would cherish that card if I had it. And it was great to scratch along when the numbers came up on the film. Yeah. So anyways, I kind of, I don't know if that's, there's actually some other, films on the Criterion Collection, part of their Pride Month that I do want to check out. One, so they filmed in John Waters' house apartment. Right? Some of these early movies. And on the wall, you saw this poster, and John Waters talked about, called The Queen. And this is a seminal documentary in the late 60s of a drag queen ball. And it's playing on the Criterion channel this month. And I watched the trailer for it, and I'm definitely going to watch it. And there's a couple others. But it's funny that one of John Waters' favorite films is a poster that's on the wall, and it's Joseph Losey's Boom. But anyways, so there's a lot, we've given you a lot today. We go on forever, but we can't. We have to cut this to the end because we're already at an hour and 25 minutes. Where did the time go, Billy? But, so if you've never seen John Waters' movie, you got to know what you're getting into. And I'm not talking Hairspray, okay? Yeah, you think you know John Waters, but That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the 70s John Waters. It was definitely stuff that will shock you. Pink Flamingos, probably the most notorious, the most shocking. And as he points out in the commentary, and I thought this was really a key to the success, it doesn't start off that shocking. It starts off very, campy and funny, but then he kind of surprises you with some stuff. And I think it's when you go down to the Marbles basement, when you have those women that they're keeping hostage and then they get artificially inseminated. I think that was one of the first times I was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. Plus, in the 80s, I didn't have any social media. I couldn't go on the internet and look up this stuff. All I knew was my friend was like, there's a scene where Divine eats dog crap. And I, of course, until you see it, you're like, oh, well, that can't be real, right? Well, it's real, baby. It's 100% real.
No, it's
real.
It's
gross.
It's real. No CGI.
So the first time watching it after 30 years, I watched it, but I was like, it's not even when he puts it in his mouth. It's when Divine goes like this.
It's the end.
Yeah, and you just know it's all kind of kicking around the mouth. That's really gross. But when I rewatched it, I had to look away. I couldn't rewatch it again. That's how powerful this guy. And the best part is, it seems like a throwaway. It doesn't really feel like it fits in the movie. He knew that was going to be the end of the movie from the whole thing. It wasn't one of these just ideas they came up with. It was like, we're doing this, but that's why Divine agreed. Was like, okay, you want me to do that? That's fine.
It's of a piece, like I said, with Divine jumping around in the barrel of fish on stage.
That's great. Don Davenport. And I had forgotten, because I hadn't seen this I hadn't seen that movie in 12, 13 years. I forgot how Edith Massey throws the acid in Divine's face, and then his face is all scarred up with this ridiculous scar makeup, and it's so great. And then when Taffy becomes Hare Krishna. It's so great. All right. Well, Bill, this has been totally fun.
Well,
and thank you, listeners, viewers, as we are now on our YouTube channel, but you can catch that on StuffWe'veSeen.com and feedback at StuffWe'veSeen.com, Instagram, Twitter, but, let's not go there because that's just a controversial place. All right. Bill from Queens, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jimmy. Be well.
And fond farewell to the great John Paragon from the Pee-wee's Big Adventure fame. He was Zombie, the genie in the Pee-wee Herman show, which was one of these big things in the early 80s that I watched on HBO and fell in love with. Sorry. So long, Zombie, the genie. Becca like a high, Becca hiney ho. Goodbye, everybody. Say goodbye to the people, Billy.
Bye.
Bye.